Good evening and welcome to Pioneer Sideline. I'm your host, Natalia Hillen. The Point Park men and women's track and field team traveled to YSU for the Mid-Major Invitational this past Saturday. There were lots of successes that came from the Pioneers, which consisted of school records and athletes qualifying for the Indoor National Championships. On the men's side, the 4x4 relay team came in third out of 29 teams, and athletes Steve Bradley, Juan Barrera, Isaiah White, and Damir Lomax made it happen with a time of 3:24. This beat the school record by 0.16 seconds. Leading the way with another school record was White in the 500-meter race, taking third with a time of 1:07. On the sprint side, Lomax placed 10th out of 71 athletes in the 400-meter dash with a time of 50:52, and Barrera was 16th with a time of 51:63. On the distance side, in the 800-meter race, Elijah James ran at 2:01 and Andy Soch had a time of 2:05. In the 1,000-meter dash, freshman Ramiro Ulunke ran a time of 2:38, which moved him to the top 5 all-time list at Point Park. Leading the way in the distance medley relay were James, Ulunke, Kostelansky, and Windelband, placing 10th with a time of 11:06. Switching gears over to the women's team. 2 athletes qualified for the NAIA Indoor National Championship in South Dakota. Freshman Emma Pavlik made her debut in the high jump, clearing 1.68 meters and made the NAIA A standard. In the NAIA ranking, she is currently at a tie for number 1 in the nation. Not only did Pavlik get first place at YSU, but she also broke a school record in the event. Another athlete on the women's side that qualified for nationals was senior Alyssa Campbell in the 3,000-meter race. Campbell made the NAIA B standard with a time of 10:23. Moving on to the triple jump, junior Sophie Jabozi took 4th place, jumping 11.02 meters. And leading the way in her first ever pentathlon was senior Nia Goodman. She took 15th place with a total of 2,150 points. Moving forward to the distance events, the women's distance medley relay team took 5th place with a time of 13:03. The team consisted of Allie Placio, Lexi Langdon, Alyssa Frosto, and Alyssa Campbell. In the 500-meter race, Chandani Shaw placed 10th with a personal record of 1:33. Nice job from all the track athletes this past weekend. The Pioneers' next meet is on Friday, February 4th at the Runners Ridge Invite in Logan, Ohio. Good luck to both teams this week. After the break, we'll hear from Hannah Bazet on how men's and women's basketball played this past week.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public Schools.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen rating.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more.
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
The men and women's basketball team had a few games this past week. And to update us on how those games played out, we send it over to Hannah Bazet. Hannah?
Thanks, Nat.
The Point Park Pioneers women's basketball team traveled to IU Southeast this past weekend to battle in a tough game. The first half of the game was very close, with both teams matching each other shot for shot. However, in the second half of the game, the Pioneers started to pull away and were able to hold on to the lead until the very end, finishing with a score of 81-71. Moving on to the next game later in the weekend, the women's team traveled to Midway University, where they unfortunately lost. The Eagles came out fierce from the very beginning and were leading by 41-16 by the very end of the first half. The Pioneer ladies were able to battle back, however it wasn't enough to take home the victory. The game ended with a score of 91-76. Their next game is this Saturday at the Community College of Allegheny County, starting at 3 p.m. No spectators are allowed at the game. Moving on to the men's basketball team, they didn't get as lucky at IU Southeast this weekend as they lost the game to the Grenadiers. The first few minutes of the game, the Pioneers were hot. However, they lost their spark in the second quarter and weren't able to get it back for the rest of the game. The final score was 96-72. Later on in the weekend, the men's team traveled to Midway University, where they unfortunately lost there too. The Pioneers started off hot and kept their momentum going throughout the game. An overtime was forced, and by the end, the Pioneers had a chance to tie up the score up with a free throw. However, it was unfortunately missed. The Pioneers ended the game just 3 points down from the Eagles with a score of 72-69. The next basketball game for the men's team is this upcoming Saturday at the Community College of Allegheny County at 1 p.m. Good luck to the men's and women's teams.
Thanks, Hannah. Up next, we hear from Jacob Kubik about Big Ben officially calling it quits, as well as how the Penguins finished up before the All-Star break. The Pittsburgh Penguins look to head into the All-Star break with a win, and number 7 decides to call it a career. To update us more on Pittsburgh sports, we bring in Jacob Kubik. Jacob?
Thanks, Nat. Thursday morning marked the end of an era in the world of Pittsburgh football, when quarterback Ben Roethlisberger officially retired from the NFL. Ben spent all 18 seasons of his professional career playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, winning 2 world championships and 3 conference championships. We wish Ben nothing but the best in his post-football career life. Moving inside now, the Pittsburgh Penguins look to close out the month of January on a high note with the continuation of the 6-game homestand. Phil Kessel and the Arizona Coyotes entered Pittsburgh with a more than underwhelming record, but put up a very respectable effort against the Penguins. The score was 3-2 Coyotes early in the third period. Then the Penguins offense flipped a switch, scoring 4 unanswered goals to win the game 6-3. The Seattle Kraken came to town for the first time ever Thursday night and had the Penguins scrambling and unable to get any offense going. Evgeny Malkin scored a third-period power play goal, but the Penguins allowed a late third-period goal and lost in overtime by a final score of 2-1. Friday night, the Red Wings came into PPG Paints Arena having given up 8 goals 2 nights prior. Once again, it seemed as if the Penguins would have had trouble scoring goals. But Jake Gensel scored 2 goals in the Penguins' shootout loss by a score of 3-2. The final game of the month of January for the Pens was against the Los Angeles Kings. The Pens found themselves down 3-1 in the third period when Brian Russ scored back-to-back goals to tie the game. However, this game fell short of overtime thanks to a late goal by Kings forward Trevor Moore, making the final score 4-3. The Penguins finished a month of January with an impressive record of 10 wins, 3 losses, 2 overtime losses. The Penguins play tonight against the Washington Capitals at 7 o'clock to wrap up this homestand and take a well-deserved week off over the All-Star weekend. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Jacob. Now let's send it over to Joey Bova to give us a recap on the crazy playoff matchups this past weekend. Joey?
Thanks, Nat. Championship Sunday is in the books, and just as we expected, what a Sunday it was. I'm Joey Bova in place of Sam Parator this week, and here is your rapid recap of the NFL Conference Championships and a preview of what is to come next week in Super Bowl 56. Sunday started off with the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead between the visiting Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs were looking to reach their third straight Super Bowl, and they got off to a great start to do it, as at one point they were up 21-3, and a majority of fans were calling this game early. Not if Joe Burrow had anything to do with it, as he fired back with 18 straight points to tie the game at 21-21. Both teams would score a field goal in the fourth quarter, and this game would be going into overtime. Kansas City won the toss yet again, which we thought spelled doom for the Bengals, but this would not be the case. Patrick Mahomes would throw a rare interception on the third play of overtime to give the Bengals the ball, and they would drive down to kick a game-winning field goal. This is their first Super Bowl since 1989. Now, to find out who their opponent would be, we go to LA and SoFi Stadium for the third meeting of division rivals San Francisco 49ers and Los Angeles Rams. The Rams were the favorites, but they had an uphill battle to climb as they had lost both regular season games to the Niners, and the Niner faithful had taken over SoFi, making it look like a home game for them. Both teams came out stagnant in the first quarter, and it would end in no score, but after the second, it would be 10-7. In favor of the 49ers, they would also score the only points of the third quarter to take it to a 17-7 lead and start to worry the Rams. They would get too frazzled as they would go on to come back and take the lead 20-17 and force Jimmy G into a horrible interception and ice the game and send the Rams to their second Super Bowl in 4 years. So now for the second year in a row, a team will get to play a Super Bowl on their home turf as the Cincinnati Bengals travel to Los Angeles to take on the Rams in what is looking to be a wild matchup in 2 weeks. And breaking news, for the second time in less than a week, Tom Brady has officially announced his retirement. In a post on his Instagram this morning, he said, quote, "I'm not going to make that competitive commitment anymore. I have loved my NFL career, and it is time to focus on my time and energy on other things that require my attention." If this really is it, and it seems like this is legit this time around, what a career for the GOAT. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Joey. Coming up next, we talk about the Pro Bowl starters and who we think deserves a spot.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raining.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. The NFL Pro Bowl is this coming Sunday, and I want to hear from you guys on who deserved their spot and who got snubbed. I'm joined with Jacob, Joey, and John. And you guys are going to tell me what you think. First off, with the AFC, We're going to go with the offense first. Jacob?
Well, I thought somebody who didn't get in at first but then got in as a reserve was Deontay Johnson, a wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know people wouldn't necessarily think that Deontay was Pro Bowl material, but he had eight touchdowns this year, which is pretty impressive. And then he had a 2.2 catch percentage increase from the year prior because he was known for all his drops last season. And then he had 59 first downs on the season too. So I think going from 2020 to 2021, I feel like that was a good increase for him, and that can only boost confidence.
Joey, offense?
I have Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. I personally think he's the best tight end in the league over George Kittle and Travis Kelce. He has 153 targets, 9 touchdowns, 1,300 yards as a tight end is very impressive, and he's the number 1 target in Baltimore. So, I mean, I'm glad Mark Andrews made it. He definitely deserves it.
Someone who I felt was definitely worthy, Patrick Mahomes. Really no elaboration needed. He let the league on fire once again. He was on the cusp of leading his team to a 3rd straight Super Bowl. And in a league where Brady, he's really becoming the new Brady in the AFC, where he's continually leading his team deep into the playoff hunt. So obviously Patrick Mahomes, he put up crazy numbers this year, as per usual, and he definitely deserves a spot.
I'm going to go with Derek Carr over Mac Jones because Derek Carr had a better season, that he was in the top 5 of total passing yards, so I feel like Derek Carr over him. We're going to go to defense now.
Okay. Defense in the AFC, I went with the safety from the Kansas City Chiefs, Tyrann Mathieu. He had 3 picks, 3 fumble recoveries, and I feel like he really lit a fire under the Kansas City defense to get them going throughout the year. He had 60 solo tackles and 16 assisted tackles as well. I feel like he was a good person to play in the back end.
Joey?
So I have listed Darius Leonard, but I just wanted to shout out TJ Watt. You know, it's TJ Watt. Come on. But I have Darius Leonard. He definitely deserves it. 8 forced fumbles, 75 solo tackles, 122 combined tackles, 4 interceptions. This is his 4th year in a row being All-Pro, and this is his 3rd Pro Bowl. He outstanding. I mean, he was pretty much the head of the Colts defense this year, and I'm sure he'll do it again next year.
Someone who I think deserves a spot in the defense in the AFC, Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals. He came in from the Saints, and he had a great year with the Saints last year, but still he was pretty underrated. And he came in with the Bengals, and look at the Bengals now. They're in the Super Bowl. He came in, he improved that defense. He's improved on what Carl Lawson was able to do when he left the Bengals in free agency. So Trey Hendrickson playing alongside Sam Hubbard, creating consistent pressure, again in the double-digit sack mark. Trey Hendrickson, what a signing for Cincinnati, and he's going to be a problem for a lot of teams for a lot of years to come, and this is one of many Pro Bowl berths for him.
Nice, guys. We're going to move on to the NFC, starting with offense. Jacob.
Okay, I have Kyle Pitts, tight end of the Atlanta Falcons. As a rookie this year, he averaged 15.1 yards per reception with only 1 touchdown on the year, but had 43 first down conversions. He was a good safety blanket for Matt Ryan. I feel like was really talked up coming out of Florida this year, and I think that he only is going to grow and only going to reach his highest potential later down. So I feel like he's a really, really blossoming player in the NFL right now.
Joey?
I mean, Jacob had who I had. I had Kyle Pitts. Unbelievable rookie year, especially for someone on the Falcons. Unfortunately, I have to say that. But he had a great year. I didn't get any stats down, but my honorable mention was Justin Jefferson. I mean, blowout rookie year he had last year. Unbelievable. He deserves his, Pro Bowl spot this year, and I hope him the best.
On the day when the greatest football player in history retired, we got to shout him out. Tom Brady. He made the roster this year, as he should have. At age 44, 5K plus yards and 40 plus touchdowns. Insane. Absolutely insane. I know he just retired, but he could keep going another 3 to 5 years if he really wanted to. It's Tom Brady, so again.
Tom Brady is definitely, I agree with John on that one. I mean, there was stuff going back and forth if he was actually retiring, but I know that at the end of it, I feel like it is his time to retire. So. All right, we're going to move on to the defense. Jacob?
Okay, I have Shaq Barrett, outside linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had 10 sacks on the year, 37 solo tackles, 14 assistant tackles, and 22 QB hits. Obviously, we're kind of spoiled in the city of Pittsburgh to have TJ Watt as an outside linebacker getting to the quarterback, but for Shaq Barrett to get 10 sacks down in Tampa, it really provided a kickstart for the whole team. So I feel like that was a really good pick for the Pro Bowl.
Joey?
I have Nick Bosa, DN for the 49ers. He had 15.5 sacks this year. He had 40 solo, 52 combined tackles, 4 forced fumbles, and this is his 2nd Pro Bowl. I mean, like I said about Darius Leonard, Nick Bosa's the head of the 49ers defense. I mean, he's only been in the league for a couple years, but like his brother, he's an animal on defense.
I'm going to go with the Penn Hills product, Aaron Donald, one of the most dominant defensive players to ever play the game. Donald, reigning defensive player of the year. It should have went to TJ Watt, but we'll let that slide. He made, again, we saw his presence felt on the final play of the game in the NFC Championship game, and now his team's headed to the big game. So Aaron Donald, obviously, he's a perennial Pro Bowler. He'll continue to be, and as he'll continue to be a Pro Bowler as well. So Aaron Donald definitely deserves a spot in the Pro Bowl.
So after hearing all of what you guys have said, both with the AFC and NFC, we've heard a lot. Do we agree or disagree with a lot of what we said here?
I mean, I have a couple snubs. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
All right. So for the AFC, for my offensive pick, I have Josh Allen. I don't think Lamar Jackson should be a Pro Bowler over Josh Allen. Josh Allen is significantly better. He led his team to the playoffs and fought hard against the Chiefs. He realistically should have won the game. Unfortunately, he didn't with that unlucky coin toss. I mean, 4,400 yards, 36 touchdowns, and I mean, it's Josh Allen. Come on. Yeah. Like, he's so much better than Lamar. And for my defensive player, I have Jordan Poyer, free safety for the Bills. He didn't get the spot over Tyrann Mathieu. Jacob said Tyrann Mathieu deserved the spot. I disagree. I think Jordan Poyer deserves it. 60 solo tackles. He has a sack, 5 interceptions. All of his stats are better than Tyrann Mathieu. I feel like that might have been more of a popularity pick, but, you know.
Again, I have some snubs as well, Joey. I agree. The Pro Bowl system, it just seems like it's a popularity contest. And Lamar Jackson should not have made it this year. I like that you said Josh Allen, but I'm going to go Joe Burrow. He should have been named to the original team for sure. And he has more touchdowns. Lamar had more INTs than touchdowns this year. Burrow just led his team to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, Joe Burrow, obviously, I think he should have made the Pro Bowl over Lamar. Josh Allen also should have made it. And for a snub on defense, I'm going to go with Minkah Fitzpatrick. You said Tyrann Mathieu should have made it, but Minkah Fitzpatrick, the run defense this year for the Steelers fell apart. And that free safety, he's supposed to be a middle of the field, turnover, game-changing type guy. Minkah really wasn't able to fit into that role this year due to the Steelers' run defense falling apart. So Minkah Fitzpatrick, he saved a ton of touchdowns this year for the Steelers making tackles. So he had 100-plus tackles. That's a free safety. That's insane. And he had 2 picks as well. So Minkah Fitzpatrick, I definitely feel like he should have made it. Tyrann, I feel like a little name recognition. He also has a more talented, more complete team around him, I feel like. So Minkah, I feel like he got snubbed.
Well, I couldn't agree more with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. So since you guys already said that, I only have one snub, and it's Austin Eckler over Nick Chubb as running back. Austin Eckler is on the Los Angeles Chargers. He's in the backfield with Justin Herbert. He had 206 rushing attempts, 911 yards for the year, 12 first downs. He averaged 56.9 yards per game. He's in the backfield with Justin Herbert, so that makes it a dynamic offense between Herbert throwing the ball and you have to respect Eckler running the ball. I feel like with how much Chubb was out this year between injury and COVID, Cleveland picked up a running back just off the street and brought him in to play a game. I feel like that should not give Chubb a position in the Pro Bowl. I feel like Austin Eckler should have got a position over him.
Well, guys, we're going to have to see how the game goes on Sunday. You guys excited for it? All right. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Be sure to join us next week at the same Pioneer time, the same Pioneer channel, and the same Pioneer Sideline.